Grønland. Ja, jeg står kigger her igen. I er jo spændte på at få at vide, I har siddet derinde en time. Hvad sagde amerikanerne til? Hvad bliver samarbejdet fremover? Har vi stadigvæk i USA, som hvis hovedformål er at ville hive Grønland ud af rigsfællesskabet og gøre Grønland til en 51. 20. stat? Peger folk her til mig, jeg skal læse mig om, og det gør jeg så nu, fordi nu kan vi så se Lars Løkke Rasmussen, og jeg tror også, man kunne se, ja, man kan også se Vivian Motzfeldt, så nu var det ikke længe før de kommer, og de kommer gående her. Nu kan vi se Lars Løkke Rasmussen ud af døren sammen med Vivian Motzfeldt, side om side i roligt tempo ned mod os, og altså det er både dansk presse, det er grønlandsk presse, og så er det international presse for alle mulige lande, der er til stede her. Jeg kan ikke huske, hvornår at, der har været så meget pressefokus omkring noget, der foregik på den danske ambassade. Det er altså det, vi ser nu. Lars Løkke Rasmussen.
I gather you couldn't hear me on any of those. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Narrative Live as we bring you live coverage of the press conference we're expecting now. This is after a long conversation. Let's jump into what they're saying here. This is the Danish
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen from the press.
Greenlandic Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt.
Minister Vivian Motzfeldt and I met with Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio today. We came here following a number of, how should I put it, remarkable public comments on Greenland and Arctic security. Our aim was to find a joint way forward to increase Arctic security. What can the Kingdom of Denmark do more? What can US do more? What can NATO do more? The Kingdom of Denmark has already stepped up our own contribution by committing additional funds for military capabilities, not dock slates, but ships, drones, fighter jets, etc. And we are definitely ready to do more. The US has already a wide military access to Greenland. Under the 1951 Defense Agreement, the US can always ask for increasing its presence in Greenland, and therefore we wish to hear if the US had any further requests to make in this aspect. We would examine any such request constructively. Greenland is, through the Kingdom of Denmark, a member of NATO and has been that since the very founding of NATO in 1949, and is therefore also covered by Article 5. We have been pushing for quite a while in NATO for a stronger collective role in Greenland together with a number of allies. And we are eager to work with the US on advancing this agenda, and we are prepared to go further. Therefore, our aim was to find a common understanding on all these points and to launch, if possible, further in-depth work to deliver on them. On this basis, we had what I will describe as a frank but also constructive discussion. The discussions focused on how to ensure the long-term security in Greenland. And here our perspectives continue to differ, I must say. The President has made his view clear, and we have a different position. We, the Kingdom of Denmark, continue to believe that also the long-term security of Greenland can be ensured inside the current framework, the 1951 agreement on the defense of Greenland, as well as the NATO treaty. For us, ideas that would not respect territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark and the right of self-determination of the Greenlandic people are, of course, totally unacceptable. And we therefore still have a fundamental disagreement, but we also agree to disagree. And therefore we will, however, continue to talk. We have decided to form a high-level working group to explore if we can find a common way forward. The group, in our view, should focus on how to address the American security concerns, while at the same time respecting the red lines of the Kingdom of Denmark. We expect that such a group will meet for a first time within a matter of weeks. And then I will pass the floor to my colleague from Greenland, Vivian Mosfeld.
Thank you so much. Not repeating what already been said here. So I would like to say something in my own language, because there are many, many people in Greenland that follows. And for that, I hope that you will allow me. So, asasakka nunaqatikka naringiraa tamas marinnaasusi ulloq uatsinnut pissanganarsimagoq oqaatigilarali ullumik ataatimiineq ingerlalluarsimammat aamalu inimi ataatimiiffigisatsinni атаққиқатигиинеқ ааллаавигалугу оқалеқатигиинери ингерланнеқарсимаммата массаккуллу сиуму саммисимик оқалеқатигиинерит ингерлаққиннissaанут аққутиник уярлеқатигииниссатсиннут исимақатигиисималлута. I think that our meeting today and our commitment to find the right path is something that gives us to be able to see forward. And by saying that, I also committed on what Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen already said. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And then I think we take a few questions. Tom from BBC. Yes.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Just first of all, you talked about the working group. Can you just give us a sense of what this means now? So what has actually been agreed you're going to do next, despite this, as you described it, fundamental disagreement? And you mentioned the dog slates. In terms of what you've announced in terms of beefing up security in the Arctic around Greenland, when you hear that kind of language from President Trump about amounting to no more than 2 dog slates, how does that make you feel?
Well, that's actually quite a few questions at the same time. Well, I have known the president for quite a while, also in my former capacity as prime minister in Denmark, and I know his approach. But I must say, and even though he addressed things quite differently from what I would have done myself, there's also always a bit of truth in what he's saying, not about the dog slates. Well, we also have dog slates to our special forces. That's the way to, otherwise you couldn't come around in the northern part of Greenland. But I must say that, of course, we share to some extent his concerns. There is definitely a new security situation in the Arctic and the high north. All of us, transatlantic, took the peace dividend years ago. And we have the vision of keeping Arctic as a low-tension region. That's probably also why US themselves have decided to have a much softer footprint in Greenland. During the Cold War, at some stage, they had 17 different military installations and military bases. Now they only have one. They had like 10,000 personnel in Greenland. Now they have around 200. That's not our decision. That's a US decision. And now the situation is entirely different. And of course, we have to respond to this. The big difference is whether that must lead to a situation where US acquire Greenland, and that is absolutely not necessary. I mean, we have the long-lasting diplomatic relation, the longest lasting diplomatic relation with US that any US ally has, 225 years in a row. And we have a perfect framework which could be used. And therefore, to answer your question, even though we wasn't so successful that we reached, a conclusion where our American colleagues said, "Oh, sorry, it was totally misunderstanding. We gave up on our ambitions." There's clearly a disagreement. We agreed that it makes sense to try to sit down on a high level to explore whether there is possibilities to accommodate the concerns of the president, while we at the same time respect the red lines of the Kingdom of Denmark. So this is the work we will start. Whether that is doable, I don't know. I hope, and I would like to express that that it could take, down the temperature. We have now had like 13 months with this ongoing discussions in social media, and this is actually the very first time where we could sit down at a top political level to discuss it. And it was a great opportunity also for Vivian and I to go up against the narrative, because it is not a true narrative that we have, Chinese warships all around the place. According to our intelligence, we haven't had a Chinese warship in Greenland for a decade or so. So from that perspective, it was a very constructive meeting. As I said, frank discussion among equal partners, and now at least we have to give it a try. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think it's very important to say it again, that how important it is from our side to strengthen our cooperation with the United States, but that doesn't mean that we want to be owned by United States, but as allies, how we can strengthen our cooperation, it's all our interest.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Of course, I would like to ask this question in Danish, but let me do it in English here.
Yes.
Because of our colleagues here. Do you see any compromise ahead of you? You said a little bit. Could you elaborate a little on the possible compromise that there would be between the president's wish to acquire Greenland or have control of Greenland and the red lines that the Kingdom of Denmark has left right now? And if you also can tell us just a little bit about the approach that the Americans had to this meeting. What was their primary goal, as you see it? Was that to reach that end goal, or was it an open discussion of how do we solve the security situation in the Arctic?
Well, first of all, I don't think this is the proper place to elaborate on what could be a compromise. The whole idea and the reason why we asked for this meeting was to turn public debate in a very, black and white kind of setting into a discussion where there's room for nuances. And therefore, I'm pleased, even though we do not agree whether this is doable, while we at the same time should respect the kingdom's red lines, at least it is productive to start discussions at a high level. And then we have to see whether we will be successful or not. I would say, and that is probably in comparison to some of the public debate, that the meeting took place in a very constructive atmosphere, where we also had, as I said, the opportunity to at least challenge the narrative presented by the American president. And I think that is a necessity if we want to have a proper debate. It was basically about security. I mean, and as I said, even though there's not an instant threat from China and Russia, at least not a threat we can't accommodate. For instance, Chinese investments, we have avoided that due to close cooperation between Greenland and Denmark. When you saw like 10 years ago, the Belt and Road Initiative and the idea of Chinese investments in infrastructure in Greenland, we avoided that. So there's no, Chinese presence in Greenland, but there's a concern. Will that be the case in like a 10 or 20 years from now? It will not, because our Greenlandic friends have introduced investment screening schemes, etc. And Denmark, is by all means on the right side of history. And therefore, we will also continue to do what we already have done. We have been stepping up. We have allocated almost $15 billion within just the last couple of years to capabilities in the High North. We have been pushing among the Arctic NATO states for a bigger NATO engagement. Honestly speaking, and now I can only point fingers at the former American administration, US has historically been a bit reluctant. Hopefully that will change now. There's a dialogue within the NATO framework, and we want to step up, and hopefully that could also accommodate some of the president's concern. But it's not that I'm now, saying everything is solved. It's not solved. We didn't manage, but I honestly speaking, I didn't believe that was doable. We didn't manage to change the American position. It's clear that the president has this wish of conquering over Greenland. We made it very, very clear that this is not in the interest of the kingdom. There's a government in Greenland with support from 3/4 of the Greenlandic population. The premier made it very, very clear yesterday that Greenland, for the time being and for foreseeable future, will remain within the kingdom of Denmark. And therefore, this is a common position that we want to work with our American friends and allies, but it must be respectful cooperation and it must respect the red lines. Should we take a very final question and then, come on. There's a fight going on now about, okay, yes.
I would also like to, of course, ask a question in Danish.
We can do that afterwards.
For both of you. So you say you have had a constructive meeting. You said in Greenlandic, I could hear the translation, it was a good meeting. But how do you feel about going out of that room without the threat being off the table? So we still have the American administration that wants to have Greenland being part of the United States. And you say, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, that, well, we hope that we can find a way. But how do you actually feel? It can't be very sort of securing, isn't it?
Vivian?
I think that it's never been so important to initiate that we are allies, we are friends, we have been cooperated in many, many years, we have history together, so it's all our interest to find the right balances. So I don't think I can say it longer than that. Of course, we have work to do in the future. And for us, the most important is that you find the normalized relationship we used to have, and it's very important. And I think that we have initiated so many times where we stand and our geopolitical and location and everything that is very important, and we do it as an ally, and we do it. Of course, it's also our interest that Greenland's positions and how we do it, that you do it on behalf of the allies. And yes.
Can I just ask a question?
That will be the final question.
Can I just ask you?
That would be the final question.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Can I just ask you about the emotion of this moment? What did the administration, what did Trump's team say to you when you presumably told them that you can't just take over a people, you can't just take over and acquire a nation? Was there any discussion about, did they appreciate that perspective, or for them is this simply about security?
I think that what we have been saying, that the meeting is been on a respect way, and we have shown where our limits are, and from there, I think that it will be very good to look forward, and this high level group that is going to work together. As I'm already saying, that it's all our interest to find the right path. It's all according to the security in Northern Hemisphere. So I don't want to say more than what we discussed in the closed meeting room, but I would like to have this. How do you say it in English? Hope for a more mutual understanding and trying to find the right balances is equally from all countries.
Did the Americans offer money?
It is, of course, very emotional for all of us, and of course, particularly for people living up in Greenland, but also for people in Denmark. We have 17,000 Greenlandic people living in Denmark. It sums up to like 1/3 of the Greenlandic population. We have a lot of Danes living in Greenland, more than 1 out of 10, which just emphasize that Denmark and Greenland are, integrated, and it has been that for centuries. And we look at ourselves as U.S. closest allies. I've had this discussion with the president previously. In Afghanistan, we had exactly as many casualties as U.S. And I know very well that, the future is not necessarily about the past, but I think it is important also to have the past in mind. And we are eager to fulfill our promises. And even though our view on the situation right now around Greenland differs from public statements in the US, we share the concerns in a long time perspective. And we want to work closely with the US, but it must, of course, be a respectful kind of cooperation. And we both took the opportunity, of course, also to express that it is not easy to think innovative about solutions when you wake up every morning to different threats. Whether that will have an impact, I can't say for sure, but I can only say that it is in everybody's interest, even though we disagree, that we agree to try to explore whether it is doable to accommodate some of the concerns while at the same time respecting the integrity of the Danish kingdom's territory and the self-determination of the Greenlandic people. Thank you.
We have been watching live coverage of the really interesting press conference there by the Danish foreign minister and the Greenland foreign minister about their talks today with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Now, Vance and the Secretary of State met this morning with Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen from Denmark and the Greenlandic Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt. And it turns out that this meeting was, it seems by all accounts, quite cordial, quite frank, but also that they did not reach any sort of amazing breakthrough. There is still a stalemate really underway here, where you've got the Danish king making sure that he is understood, that he is not interested in giving up his territory, his sovereign territory of Greenland, and the Greenland people also indicating that they're not interested in being bought by the Americans in any way, which is the offer that's on the table. At the same time, it seems clear that Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance made it equally clear to their counterparts there that they would absolutely be interested in taking Greenland, and that there's not really room for much communication between them. However, what they have said now is that they will take further higher level talks. There'll be a higher level working group that will take place in the coming weeks. They said we'll meet for the first time. That does buy everyone a little bit of time. It certainly doesn't mean that a conflict is about to happen tomorrow, but it does buy a little bit of time for further negotiations. However, the situation is not really any different than it was, although it is interesting that the Danish foreign minister there was quite clear about his being able to correct the narrative, as he put it, about China's vessels being outside of Greenland and there being all these, enemy vessels parading around. He was saying there hasn't been a Chinese submarine around Greenland, according to their intelligence, for over a decade. So all that being said, they all do agree that the high Arctic is important, that the situation has changed since the 1950s. There was a time during the Cold War when there were 17 military installations, 1,100 or so people of American origin or American military personnel in Greenland. Now there are just, maybe 200. There's only one base compared to many more years ago, 17 as many as years ago. But that's because the geopolitical situation has changed. The Cold War seemed to be over. There was no need to put up any resistance against Russia, and although maybe we should have. right? Maybe we should have, but we didn't. So that's where we are today, is that the situation is changing again. There's a geopolitical shift happening in the world, and the Danes there are also eager to see if they can find a way to make this work with the Americans. What they are arguing, which makes a lot of sense, is that they have an agreement that's existed since 1951. Why can't we just use that agreement, and a very long diplomatic agreement, 225 years they've had a relationship with the United States. Why can't we use that as the basis to make sure that, as we had in the past, there are more American military installations, more American personnel on Greenland without having to sell the country to the United States, which is an ally? Why are we having a conflict between two countries that really agree with each other and have the same strategic interests as each other? And that really is the question that is, begs for an answer. Why is the president so eager to have this confrontation with Europe if his goals and aims are the same? Now, if his goals and aims are not the same, that would be the reason to do that. So, when you look at the way the world map is shifting around, the way the spheres of influence are changing, and you've got Russia trying to expand its sphere of influence into Europe. You've got China trying to expand its sphere of influence across the South China Seas, and Taiwan, of course. And then America is looking to capture Greenland, Canada, maybe some other parts of the world, Venezuela. We saw what happens then to Europe, and Canada, which are currently being isolated on an ideological level because they're democracies. That's where you start seeing a conflict, because if America is not a traditional democracy, if it's now a captured or a contested democracy, let's call it that, then and Europe is a true democracy or true democratic countries, those two things are at odds with each other. And then you could see why Greenland and who owns Greenland becomes important. That's important, but also the Arctic, of course, is a very important place for everybody, because there's a lot of resources there, and there's a lot of strategic interests there that must be captured. Jacob Kaarsbo is joining us from Denmark. Jacob Kaarsbo is, of course, a former intelligence officer for the Danes. How are you doing, Jacob? I can't hear you.
Good.
Oh, there you are.
I will say, am I on?
Yeah, you're on. I got you. It might be a little delayed, but I think you're on. Say something, and then I'll figure it out as we go along here.
Yeah, that's perfect. Otherwise, I'll find another location if the web isn't strong enough here where I'm standing now.
You're pretty good.
But I will say, the presser revealed that the meeting today hadn't gone as badly as I expected. So I feel relatively well. Everything's not well and good, and it wouldn't be. Even our prime minister said that we didn't agree, but we agreed to disagree for now and keep talking. So that means that J.D. Vance didn't appear with ultimative demands and a fait accompli, as I feared he would.
He didn't back down either, though.
He didn't back down. But even our foreign minister, he's a cool customer, I will say.
Yeah.
But even he said I didn't expect that either at the presser. So they didn't back down, but they agreed to talk and see if there's any way that Denmark and the NATO allies can accommodate security concerns.
And that buys them time, which is good, right? I mean, in any event, it gives them a few weeks, maybe even longer, to really try and figure these things out. They can drag it out a little bit if they needed to as well, in trying to reach some sort of agreement. So that's not a bad thing either. Just time is useful.
No, and I have to say, I think there's near unanimous agreement here in Denmark that our foreign minister that we sent to Washington, who used to be our prime minister, was, the best the best man for the job in this country, because he's a cool customer, and he doesn't, shake his hand just because he's under a lot of pressure. He's been under a lot of pressure in his political life, much of it in his own making,
Mm.
but he always pops up to the surface again.
And he has a relationship with Trump, he said there, which sounded like a useful thing, that they've known each other from the past. So he knows who he's dealing with.
Yeah.
He did say that, the president wasn't backing down. The Danish king was going to back down. But he also said the situation had changed. As we've been speaking in the past few weeks, the situation in the Arctic is very different. The geopolitical shifts are very different now. We're seeing an America that's aligning itself differently in the world. In context of all of that, explain to people why it is important that we take a look at Greenland's security in general, considering the advances the Russians are making in the Arctic, amongst other things.
Yeah, definitely. That old idea that even the Americans subscribe to, that it's a low tension area, and there's no need to project force in the Arctic. With what has happened around Russia these last few years, makes it, that whole approach is obsolete. So there is an unanimous agreement that there's a need to boost force presence, but still, Trump uses these arguments about Golden Dome and whatnot, and that's only to advance his own aim of controlling Greenland, for the purpose of, one, symbolic reasons to make America even greater, and also this whole idea of natural resources and those crazy ideas by the madmen in Silicon Valley. So that wants this tech nirvana in Greenland. So
The foreign minister was
therefore,
also. Go ahead. Sorry, to finish that thought.
yeah, therefore, Trump uses these arguments, when it's convenient for him. There's nothing to suggest, if you read his national security strategy, that he sees Russia as a threat at all. Conversely, he sees the Europeans as a threat.
Right, which is a big point. I mean, which is what I was just saying before you joined us. Is Russia and United States are closer together now in terms of the kind of democracy they have. Sort of a contested democracy, where Canada, Europe are much more traditional liberal democracies, still with actual elections that seem to operate and reflect the votes of the vote of the people. That is the real tension between these two countries, between Europe itself and the United States, is democracy, really, as much as it is about territory and all these other things. So if you're going to start a fight over something, it would have to be because you're not aligned in some way. And they're not aligned ideologically right now. The Trump version of democracy and European version of democracy is not aligned. He's said so in his strategic document. Is Greenland really just is that what we're fighting over? But really what we're fighting over is democracy and sort of more dictatorial democracies, authoritarian democracies.
Yeah, I think so. If you look throughout history, there are two things that make alliances stick together. What's that? That's common values. They've gone adrift, and then it's common threat perception. That's gone adrift between the U.S. and Europe, both of those. So that's why it looks like very hard to keep this together as long as Trump and MAGA are in power, and hopefully the U.S. Electorate can root that out. But Trump is trying to do his utmost to stay in power, and there's no indication, that he really believes in this alliance, quite the contrary. So these arguments about needing to defend against Russia is only really because he wants to control the territory and own it and hoist the American flag.
Yeah.
That's
Or he wants to be in
it.
conflict with Europe somehow, which is also,
Yeah.
not out of the question here. So,
No.
but the picking on Greenland is kind of it's just a convenient way to start that tension, or to increase that tension. The foreign minister there also talked about China's, the narrative, at least, that Trump keeps talking about these Chinese vessels, these submarines that are busy circling Greenland. The Danes are pretty sure that there have not been any Chinese vessels for the last decade. Now there may be in the future, but he was quite good at clearing up the narrative there for people. And I mean, obviously that's your line of work. So you tell me, is that completely overblown what the president is talking about?
Oh yeah, and I think I've said that before on this on your show that there's nothing to suggest that's reality. Not even Russian ships. But as I said before, our foreign minister is a cool customer. So when he's standing there with a smile on his face, laughing that we haven't seen a Chinese vessel for a decade, then that's what he does, and he does it quite well.
He does very Danish in his approach, I got to say. There were military exercise in Greenland that are starting today, I believe, by the Danes. There's Sweden sending some troops. It looks to me like the buildup of military assets is happening on both sides.
And more will be announced tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because France, UK, Germany, if you have a bookie around the corner, go and place a bet that they'll also participate. I think that'll be good value for you.
Well, I don't bet, but I will tell you that it's absolutely seems likely that they would, of course. But that's the fear, is that NATO breaks up. But in terms of the military
investment tip,
thank you, I appreciate that. People are running off now. I don't know if you can do that. Can you book? Can you bet on these things? I suppose you can on some sites. Are you worried about the military buildup in general? I mean, once you start building up towards a war, there's tendencies that wars are more likely to happen when you're building up towards a war. It's just the nature of things. It could also be a harm reduction thing, I guess. What's your sense of what this military buildup is going to mean?
When I called for a military buildup and people called me a warmonger, I said, you don't know what you're talking about, because as the old Romans used to say, it was even before Roman times, but anyway, we prepare for war to avoid war.
Right.
Because, if you're a democracy and international law, if it's always the aggressor that decides the escalation. You prepare to deter the aggressor. Unfortunately, Putin, we didn't deter Putin from attacking Ukraine because no U.S. administration wanted to include Ukraine in NATO. So that's why Putin attacked Ukraine, because he wasn't deterred.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with dictators and wannabe dictators, you have to be able to really say you're going to come home with not only a bloody nose, but worse than that. And that's what evidence suggests. And the Canadians show us that having your elbows up when you're met by Trump is probably the right approach. And if this crisis here around Greenland has made the Europeans realize that as long as we bow our heads, Trump will keep pushing, and instead we must stand up, send military assets to Greenland, and say, stop it. Greenland will be for the Greenlanders and part of the Danish kingdom, as long as the Greenlanders want that.
Absolutely.
That's the approach, absolutely.
Because, if he's bullying his way into territory, if he's saying, that's my sandwich, I want your sandwich, he'll take the sandwich, and tomorrow he'll be back for more, as bullies do. So if we can resist it right now, keep our sandwiches to ourselves, why not? The Greenlandic Foreign Minister, Vivian Motzfeldt, reminded us all there are people involved here. She was talking to the people about their concerns in Greenland, which of course is really serious. These people's lives, their country, their livelihoods, everything has been is under question here, under attack here. So, how much are we thinking about them in this whole process, and how much are we really, concerned for the people of Greenland here?
Yeah, Greenland to a large extent has been off the agenda for most people, also in Denmark for a long time, and hopefully. Some of this, what has happened, will lead to a better relationship between Denmark and Greenland, and that's through the people of Greenland. And I think also, if you look at the other side of the coin, this crisis will perhaps also help most Greenlanders to look at a more constructive relationship with Denmark, and say, well, this thing about independence perhaps is not something we should rush to, and perhaps our political rights are better covered by the Kingdom of Denmark than being prone to aggressors. So I think that's what polls suggest also, that this tendency in Greenland to you have to shout about independence, otherwise you won't get any support in Greenland. That tide has probably turned.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There will be, the Independence Party will still be there as a force, but I think the other parties will keep that in check.
Right.
That's my best assessment.
The obvious absence in this press conference was Vance and Rubio. They did not do a joint press conference. There was just the Danish foreign minister and the Greenland foreign minister there on their own, not even on the U.S. sites. I think they were still in the embassy there. Why did Rubio and Vance not show up? And is it an indication of how tense things are?
Yeah, I think they won't be happy to admit that they'll keep talking to Denmark, and how come this meeting just didn't end up in the procurement of
why did you bring the deal home?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess they're not keen to talk about it. You may also have noticed what the White House posted before the meeting, that this was the time for Greenland to decide to go towards the White House and not towards these foolish Danes.
But wouldn't you want to say that if you were Vance or Rubio? Wouldn't you want to stand there and say that to the Greenland people and say, "Hey, we're a better proposition"?
Only if you live in an alternate reality, and don't look at what the Greenlanders are actually saying, and what the Greenland Prime Minister said yesterday very clearly, and what has also been stated before, that Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and it's not for the U.S. to Greenland is not for sale, and that won't be happening. So I think whoever put this out on X for the White House didn't really read the signals right, because if America wants Greenland, they have to take it by force. And as I've said on many occasions, guess what? The Europeans and the Canadians have much more Arctic military capability than the Americans.
Right.
So it'll be troublesome for them if we make the political decisions to defend the island, if it comes to that. Hopefully that won't happen ever, but we have to be prepared.
Yeah, Vance, I'm sure will be out there today, and so will Rubio, spinning this in a very different way. So if you're watching the various networks tonight, you'll probably hear a very different story. But the story today from the Danes and the Greenland foreign minister is that they had a constructive meeting that didn't result in any sale of a country or acquisition of a country. It resulted in a confirmation that they're going to talk some more and have high-level conversations in the coming weeks in an attempt to resolve the situation.
Broke.
Oh, sorry. Are you there? I don't know what's happening there. Okay, we're moving. I don't know if you can still hear me, but you know, this is the situation that they've had an agreement to further these talks.
Can you
They
hear
will.
me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? You can't hear me? I can hear you. I can hear you. No? We'll catch you another time then, Jacob. I don't know if you can hear me at all. I don't think you can. I'm going to ask Jacob if he wants to reconnect there briefly, but because there's not very much time left here. But if you can't hear me, Jacob, I'd suggest you click off and then join again. So that was a good conversation from Jacob. It's great to hear his perspective. He's of course a very respected intelligence guy from Denmark, highly respected. I didn't even realize how important he was until I just checked it out yesterday. I was just singing your praises, Jacob. You're a very respectable intelligence dude in Denmark. You had some pretty big positions there in the intelligence community.
Well,
now I can't hear.
I've just been doing my job. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can't hear you. That's spoken like a true Dane. It's exactly what you'd expect a true Dane to say. Just to wrap up here, because we really don't have very much longer, but what we're seeing here is an agreement to disagree, an agreement to talk further. That's good news for Greenland. It's good news for Denmark. It's probably good news for the world in general. May not be what Donald Trump wanted to hear today, but that's also good news for the world.
Yeah. And, a little bit very cautious optimism, but at least, we didn't have a Zelensky moment or anything like that. And I think that's why our foreign minister and the minister from Greenland were upbeat after the meeting.
Yeah. And NATO survives for at least another day. That's a good thing. Thanks for being here on Narrative. Jacob Kaarsbo, former intelligence officer for the Danish intelligence services. Thank you. Thanks always for being here. Thank you for your insight. And we'll see you again soon.
Phil. Thanks.
So that's the break today as we're wrapping up here. That is the breaking news today as we're wrapping up here. Thank you very much to Jacob Kaarsbo. Thank you at home for being here. I can't believe the size of the audience on a Danish diplomatic story. I would not have expected the number of people who checked out today's show. But that just tells you how much interest there is in what this president is doing. And the future of Greenland and the Arctic has certainly become a topic of conversation we could never have imagined. Thank you, as always, for being here. We can only do this coverage because you support us on Narrative and through Substack. And we do that through your subscriptions, free or paid. It's very helpful to us to get the word out. If you're a free subscriber, we welcome you here. We're glad to provide you as much free content as we can. We also hope that you'll share this wherever possible to make sure that the truth about what's going on in the world, what's going on in America right now, reaches more and more ears and eyes every single day. That's why we keep most of the content free, is because we really want this to be reaching as many people. The truth needs to come out. You're not going to get it from the state media. You're not going to get it from many of the other news organizations, but you are going to get it here on Narrative. So we appreciate your support. Of course, it does cost money to make these things happen. And that's why we also appreciate our paid subscribers. And we encourage you, if you can, to upgrade to a paid subscription. Because not only does it fund these kinds of broadcasts, so we can bring you this reporting about Greenland and Denmark, but it also allows us to keep growing, which is so important. From a network perspective, we want to keep providing even more coverage of important events. We want to be able to get to the truth in many, many different stories, and get to the truth in your communities as well. All of that requires growing in scale, and that requires funding. And we don't want to answer to anyone but you. We have no interest in big time advertisers or big oligarchs or corporate sponsors. What we really want is for this to be a network that the people can trust and that the people know will tell them the truth, because they are the people who ultimately own it. So please become a paid subscriber if you're able to. It also helps us push this kind of content to the top of the algorithm, which means more people see it and more people get to have an interaction with our journalism. Speaking of which, at 3:00 in just 20 minutes from now, we'll be back with a very special 5-stack with Dean Blundell Also joining us will be Ellie Leonard and Lev Parnas as we continue to talk about the Epstein files, what's in them, and what's Michael Cohen's role in trying to reveal or conceal what's in those Epstein files? You know, does Cohen know more than he's saying? There are many indications, including a newly discovered email that suggests he does know a lot more. So in about 20 minutes, you'll join us, I hope, for a very special 5-stack, and we shall see you here at that time. I'm almost tempted to just keep this stream open, but we'll start another one because it's just better. So we'll see you again in 20 minutes from now. Thank you for being here on the breaking news coverage from Narrative today.